There's that. Um, don't mind me. I was fumble fingers a minute ago. I hit like the wrong button once, twice, three times. Um,
Hey James, I just wanted to let you know that was me talking. I got a promotion, and I don't know how to talk as Deadpool head on the chat anymore. So that's fun. And hello, Lady Dicky TV. Good to see you.
all right. Okay. So professional time.
Yeah.
Um, it's us. It's this Uncanny Earth. Rob is out for the weekend, so it's the two of us, and we're gonna have something that's gonna be. It's gonna be something that we're gonna be a little kind of dance aroundish, sort of, because I don't want to get into a lot of. I don't want to get into any sort
Can
of.
you hear me now?
Oh yeah, yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
You did sound a little muffled, but I thought maybe it was just your mic.
Can you hear me now?
All right. Okay. So, um, what was I talking about? I was talking about the topic. We are going to be talking about the deep state and the modern idea of the possibility of Illuminati, which is not what it used to be, and I think is a little overblown, to be honest. I think a lot of the things that people assume about the topic are probably more hearsay and more conspiracy than anything else, but we're not entirely sure. And we're going to try to be super open minded about it. We're also not going to get too into certain parts of the topic because I know right now, um, with the current various election cycles here in the United States, then it's a big topic. We're not going to do too many connections between that and this. We're going to stick to hypotheticals and theoreticals and the idea of the existence of these things rather than whether we think that there's this kind of stuff going on in various events that have happened recently. And that being said, we won't be doing any commenting on the recent attempt as of a few days ago. That's all I'm going to use as a descriptor because I don't want YouTube to kick us off, and I also don't want to start any particular arguments or discussions about it necessarily,
Yes.
um, because that's just how we're going to do things. We try to stay politically neutral as far as the show goes. We have our own ideas about it, but and you can ask us about those separately on our various social media if you like. Um, and James, you do have a good point. Before we even dive in, there is over the last few years, especially, there's been a lot of things that were initially deemed conspiracy theories that have shown to be a lot more accurate. So we'll see how that goes. So um, you can tell I'm a bit scattered. I had everything all set up, and then I started hitting buttons wrong, and now I'm kind of
Yeah.
like, um, I should probably be a bit more friendly. How are you doing, Steven?
Good. I'm good.
How's Tennessee?
About the same. Still pretty hot, but we got down to the 80s now, so that's good.
That's an accomplishment for
Yeah.
the South. Um, we had some cooler weather today, so I was outside on the grill making some food, doing that kind of thing, having a good time,
This
uh,
uncanny barbecue.
having some drinks and things, and but now we're here. Now we're gonna hopefully not get kicked off YouTube.
Yeah.
Um, so the deep state. I'm gonna start off with a definition that I think is probably a bit iffy. As
Okay.
always, we're going to go for the Wikipedia definition first because that's
Yeah.
the widely supported one by a majority of people, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the correct one. We all know Wikipedia is editable by people, and occasionally they're not always honest with their edits, but they're taken as gospel anyway.
Hey,
So
we probably edited a few pages when we were younger.
I tried a couple times, actually
Yeah.
factual stuff, and they kicked mine out because I I guess they didn't like facts,
Oh
I
no.
suppose.
Huh.
But so I gave up after a little while. But anyway, I'm gonna give the Wikipedia what they say about the deep state, and then I'm going to turn it over to Steven after that to ask what he's found out and what he's seen about the deep state, and then we'll start deep diving into that a little bit.
All right.
Um, so Wikipedia, of course, says that it's an American political conspiracy theory that is a clandestine network of members of the federal government, specifically within the FBI and CIA, working in conjunction with high level financial and industrial entities and leaders to exercise power alongside or within the United States government. Now, according to Wikipedia, and I don't know how true this is, this seems kind of far fetched as far as the connection goes, but it says the term deep state originated in the 1990s as a reference to an alleged long-time deep state in the country of Turkey. Um, and then they began to use it to refer to the American government, and then it became popularized during the Obama and Trump administrations. Um, it says that the term has precedence since at least the 1950s, and here's where there's a little bit of fact in here, including the concept of the military-industrial complex, which is a true thing. That's something that leaders of the past who've been in and out of office have said, yes, this is how that works. It was famously part of, I believe it was the Truman speech when he was exiting the office, that he talked long about the military-industrial complex. Um, but it says a cabal of generals and defense contractors who enrich themselves through pushing the country into endless wars, which is fairly plausible. It's probably the most plausible part of this entire thing. And in closing from Wikipedia, opinion polling done in 2017 and 2018 suggests that approximately half of all Americans believe in the existence of a deep state in the United States, which is a pretty telling figure, to be honest. So that's the Wikipedia sanitized, might be true, might be a bunch of BS sort of description of it. Stephen, what do you have to say about the concept?
Well, it sounds very similar to something that I would love to reference back to Metal Gear Solid, called the Patriots or the Lale Lule Lo. And they were basically trying to get to a point just very quickly. They were trying to get to a point where there was endless war and mass information by AI, and they were all about the AI, the advancement of AI. And this game was made back in 2006, talking about how the government or the deep state, the patriots, however you want to word it, the people behind the scenes who are in charge of everything, they said that they wanted to use AI to produce mass misinformation all over social media and get AI to the point where it's indistinguishable from reality so that it can produce all this misinformation. And then they have created the problem, so they will give us the solution in the form of a digital ID provided by the government that we will need in order to access the internet, which will allow them to spy on us even easier than they already do.
Now, we've got a lot of pop culture references to organizations similar to the deep state. Now, a lot of times the term is goes hand in hand with the term Illuminati, which is a bit more
Yeah.
popularized thing that people have seen for a long time. Um, to give some background on that, the original Illuminati was a Bavarian secret society, I believe in the 1800s, possibly earlier. Um, that is nothing at all like what people describe it to be today, and it's not connected as far as where anybody can tell between the idea of what it is today versus what it was at the time. The original organization disbanded, relatively fell apart.
The
Um,
stonemasons, wasn't it?
it was a little different. I'm gonna do a double
Okay.
check here so I can give
Because I remember you and Rob did it back in the day, in the early days, back on episode 23, back when we
mhm.
still talked about Count Saint Germain.
And it was established by Adam Weishaupt, who was a German philosopher, and he was also professor of civil and later canon law. He's from He lived between 1748 and 1830, so about the 1800s. Um, and the Illuminati originally, it was designated for a group of outstanding and enlightened individuals in society, and they had a democratic society within themselves, and they saw themselves as they had a vision of liberating people from religious bondage, and they wanted to undermine corrupted governments and have a more enlightened society. And what they did was they had a network of spies and counter spies, and they kept them separate from each other so they didn't know who they were, so they couldn't report back. And they used that to influence policy decisions, various things in their own local governments. Now, that organization fell apart when um, it doesn't say exactly here, but Weishaupt fled Bavaria in 1784 because their writings were labeled as seditious. The society was banned, and he lost his position in the University of Ingolstadt. So a lot of the membership kind of dispersed around that time. Now, the modern idea of the Illuminati is again very, very, very close to what the idea we have here, what the deep state is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a group of high-ranking individuals who are part of um, either just the United States government itself or also parts of business, part of the scientific community, et cetera, et cetera. Um, I have some problems with some of that based on the individuals that are supposed to be involved because a good two
George
thirds
Washington.
a good two-thirds of the people in the modern age that are supposed to be involved within my lifetime are basically idiots, to be
Yeah.
fair. So I kind of don't, unless every single one of them is just like the front facing, like these are the people we want you to believe are the Illuminati, while the real
Oh,
ones are behind the scenes, which could be
actually,
true.
hey, I
But
do have something to say about that. Actually, I when I was doing my research, I actually found out, according to what I read, what I was doing, I was under the impression that the Illuminati actually has an inner circle of Luciferians, but if you're a Christian, they won't let you get to the inner circle, and but they still want Christians in their, you know, I don't know what else to call it, a cult. They still want Christians in there so that they can keep Christians and other people like celebrities on the outer edges of the Illuminati so that they can make them look good with like charity work, like, helping with this or helping with that. And they can make them look good. While the inner circle are the ones who actually get to control everything.
and that's a plausible idea. The whole thing kind of gets a little bit nonsensical to me when they include so many different disparate parts to it. Um, and the only way that that could work is, again, if the inside part is using everything else as pure distraction, which is, again, possible. But I don't know. I see too many broad. And I don't want to get too deeply into this either, because this is something that would get us
Okay.
potentially blacklisted off of YouTube. But the
Uh
whole
oh.
Q idea, not to knock anybody that's into that or anything like that, but the whole Q thing from the last few years, a lot of it is kind of nonsense. Um, there are some things that raise some eyebrows, and I'm kind of like, okay, that's interesting. But the majority of it is, it feels like it was just something put together to get people to follow carrot and run along. Um, but getting back to some of the people who are supposed to be involved in the Illuminati. Now we have folks like, again, the Rothschilds family, and we have these days there's boogeyman type people, like there's that Soros individual. I don't want to get again too into that because we're going to get labeled real quick. But some other people, like it's like when we talked about the idea that there's lizard people in the government. It seems kind of silly. Some of the people pointed out as, oh, hey, this is a lizard person. Like George W. Bush, don't think he's a lizard person. Don't think he's very smart either, as far as Illuminati style things go. Smart enough to be in government, sure, but I don't think he's Illuminati material. Okay. The
Everyone
Clintons,
is just a figurehead.
I don't think they're Illuminati material. I think there's some things going on there. I think there's some shifty people. Not to point out any specific things, but again, I don't think they're Illuminati material. If it's supposed to be these people that are supposed to be super smart and running the world, to be fair.
Well, I actually have a fun theory about that. If you go around talking about the Illuminati, then they can't do anything to you, because if they did, it would only provide evidence of their existence. So they just go out and discredit you and make you look crazy. So nobody will listen to you.
The other flip side of that is they I had a thought and then it was gone. Never mind. I had a flip side to that, but anyway, it's like and some of the supposedly every major pop musician right now, all the biggest ones like Jay-Z
All
and
of them.
Beyonce and all of them, they're all supposed to be part of the Illuminati, and I fail to see it because these people are not
Balenciaga.
very smart. They're very good and they make a lot more money than I do. I don't like any of their music or anything like that, but they are obviously a lot more successful than I am. So people must like it. So it must be pretty good for the people
Yeah.
that like it.
When you reach a certain level of fame or success, they automatically assume you're in the Illuminati, because how could you be that successful unless you're in the Illuminati?
And again, that could be another one of those things that are like they're supposed to, oh yeah, people want to believe they're in the Illuminati because, oh
Yeah.
well, if we're thinking these people are the Illuminati, we're not looking at the actual smart people. And that could very well be a thing. And I don't want to discount the whole thing because honestly, I don't know 100%. I'm not going to make a hard and fast call that obviously it doesn't exist or it does exist because I don't know. And I do believe that there are things and there are pathways in at least our federal government and probably others overseas, where there's people kind of working behind the scenes and they're maneuvering things in different ways. Like a lot of our governing system doesn't work very well. At least for us, it doesn't work
Yeah.
very well. For people who are making a buttload of money off of it, it seems to be working pretty well. So if it's not for us, it's for somebody else. And then who's helping that all run? So I can't discount it. And the more you kind of start trying to do the mental gymnastics about it, the more you get into a position where either you believe all of it or you believe none of it, which is probably kind of the point. Because as with most things, the truth is somewhere in between.
What about the evil karma?
Talk about it.
Okay, so my understanding is the Illuminati and a lot of secret organizations in general believe in this thing called evil karma, which is where they tell you something, and because they've told you that, hey, we're going to do this bad thing, it's like, okay, that's fine. At least you told people that you're going to do it, so it's okay. So a lot of people actually tie that back to The Simpsons, and they say that Matt Groening, the creator, is part of the Illuminati, and that's why The Simpsons predicts so much stuff properly, because it's actually the Illuminati planning the stuff, and then they're telling you exactly what they're going to do for their evil karma, so that it's all settled.
That's an interesting thought. For certain people, there are very, very, very smart people in the world. There are some people who are like super, like much smarter than me. I think the people who work on The Simpsons aren't necessarily super genius plugged into the Illuminati, but I do think they're very good at
At
watching
predicting.
trends
Yeah,
and
that's what
watching
they've
pop
said.
culture.
Yeah, I've
And
read interviews with them where they said that, and they said that exactly what you said. They said they've seen this stuff in the past, and they think, huh, What would be the most absurd, ridiculous thing we could possibly think of, and that's what they do.
And I feel like they're just because they're tuned in and they're plugged in, and that is most of the entirety of their job, because that show has always been about, on some level, about trends and about
Yeah.
the direction of pop culture and things, and that's why it's so successful still. That's why it's still so popular. Um, I I tend to think that's why they tend to get that stuff right more than anything else, because they they're just so tuned in. Um, Now there are other things too, like Kid X Bohemian Grove is a place, and they do things there, and nobody's really allowed to know. There's been some stuff that's leaked out. There's been some popularized stuff. That's another one of those situations where what you're talking about, where they can say flat out, "Oh yeah, there's this thing," because nobody would really believe it. Because it's been featured on at least one of these monster hunt, ghost hunt style shows that I watched years ago. Alex Jones went there, and I watched the episode where he went there with these two guys. They went on canoes and like peeked through the gate or something like that. And then when they went back, Alex got arrested. And I don't know how real that was and how much that was staged, but it's a real place, and
Yeah.
you can't go. It's protected by security all the time. So there's been a few pictures that are out there of the big owl statue and people gathered out there. So I mean, what do they really do there? It's hard to say. We only have the stories. Um, and speaking of Alex Jones, this is another thing I don't want to get too into because YouTube is touchy about him right now. Um, I did watch some of his old stuff back in the day, listen to some of his stuff back in the day, pre a lot of this Q stuff. I think I don't want to say that he himself got a little crazy, but I think he got a little bit entertaining. I think he decided that he was going to appear a little crazy for
The auto
entertainment
tune
purposes.
song. I'm just gonna leave it at that. If you know.
But so yeah, there are various different things that are connected to the theory of the Illuminati, and there are legitimate organizations, and I say legitimate not that they're doing good things, but that they're real legal organizations.
The stonemasons.
Um, well, we've got just speaking of internal government offices, you've got the Council on Foreign Relations. You've got the various G7, G20, all those different things, all working together towards very different things. Um, you've got OPEC, which on the surface of it, you think, oh, well, how's that going to be some secret thing? But they get together all the time and they control the prices of your oil. I mean,
What about the Department of Defense and the NSA?
we've got those. We've got the Homeland Security now, which is basically free reign to do just about whatever they want.
That's my
Most of
excuse
the
to
time,
bring up MJ12.
we've got MJ12, Majestic 12 is a big one. And it's interesting because you have all these little different pockets. And the easiest outlook is to say, oh, they're all connected and say it's all one organization. But they could all be working at different parts. They could all be kind of their own thing. And that's another
BlackRock.
part of it too. That's the big name that's been around lately because they own so many financial pieces of the whole system. Um,
And the Fed Bank.
yeah, yeah, which they irritate the crap out of me right now for practical reasons because it's partly what they're doing
Yes,
that
Kid X.
people's credit cards and everything are out of control. But so there's a lot of moving parts to the theory. It's super simple to just say Illuminati and that's it, and everything's part of that. But I think the more you examine it, I think there are a lot of moving
There's
parts that are doing
layers.
their own
It's like a
thing.
pyramid.
Mm.
And they say that the Vatican is pretty high up there. Did you find out anything about the Black Pope? I kind of heard about it, but I didn't really find out much about it.
Um, I believe that's an idea about a satanic pope.
Okay.
Um, and it's supposedly the leader of the Jesuits is the Black Pope.
Yeah, that's what I
Not
was.
black as in skin color. I don't want anybody to get any,
Yeah,
race
the
ideas or anything.
robes.
But
I heard it was the color of the robes.
and supposedly it's also supposed to stand in opposition to the traditional pope, whereas one is supposed to be the face and one is supposed to be the behind the scenes kind of thing, and there one actually has the power and one doesn't. Um, I'm not as
Fair
informed
enough.
about that. So,
Yeah, I was researching the Jesuits earlier today, and my understanding is they're basically followers of Jesus, Jesuit, but they broke off and started doing their own thing, and that's kind of where they came to now.
well, that's part of a splinter idea too of way, 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 way back. Um, in some of the apocryphal stuff, it's not really mentioned straight out, but there's some historical things to back up that the earliest people who would label themselves something like Christians were actually they were called zealots because they were part of this new religion and they were going to overthrow the Roman government, and they had a fortress out actually in the desert that was assaulted and everyone there was killed. They fought to the death and they
Oh
killed
wow.
almost everybody involved. But the idea supposedly spread because it's based on the idea that
You can't kill an idea.
the main person who was the Jesus individual, rather than just being a religious figure, was also a earthly figure who was meant to inspire change and to overthrow the government and things like that. And that idea kept on going in the form of the Jesuits. And that's again, that's a theory
Did
rather than absolute fact. I've never been too
did that lead into the Knights Templar perhaps?
potentially. The thing about the Templars, though, is the Templars is an interesting idea in that they may not have really been the villains that everybody thinks they are. I mean, they did take part in the Crusades, and a lot of atrocities were done on it on a lot of different sides for the Crusades.
Hmm.
And
They were mercenaries, weren't they?
because they had their own lands, they had their own money, they had their own titles and their own lordship, and they were a very powerful like state within a state. They
Yeah.
had their own. They were essentially their own country, basically wherever they decided to settle, because they had the riches and they had the military
Yeah.
strength to back it up. And so they were recruited into the Crusades, and then the overriding story is in two parts. The official story is that they were blasphemers, that they were secretly worshiping a figure called the Baphomet, that they had a lot of different occult rituals, and so that they were attacked by the Inquisition and they were
But it
all
was
put to the
just
sword.
hearsay, was it not?
It's hard to say at this point because there's so many
Okay.
years removed. We don't know. That's what history says it
Yeah.
was. Another part, based on other people's research, that's unproven, is that all of those charges were trumped up because once they were done using them for the Crusades and the Templars were even richer,
They
they were
didn't like
seen
that.
as a threat. They were
Yeah.
seen as a potential threat to governments, to different things, and so they provided these false charges, provided the idea of the Baphomet, etc., and that let
That's
them
where the money
seize
comes
the
into play.
assets. They seized the money, they seized the lands, they seized everything. Um, Even most of the people who they got to, like, if you confess, it'll be easier for you. Even when they got a lot of them to confess, they still killed them anyway.
Yeah.
They basically said, "Oh well, now you've repented of your sins. You're going to go to heaven. See you later," and that was it. So I lean more in that direction than I do in the official story because that's how history kind of unfolds a lot of times.
Yeah.
Um, but again, we don't know. We weren't there at the time. We only have what's been written, and as is the popular phrase. The histories are usually written by the winners.
Yeah, pretty much.
So it's hard to say. But I'm glad that the alternate ideas of the Templar history are kind of out there for people to consider and kind of look at a little bit.
Yeah.
But and that's the thing about the Vatican as well. As much as people would say, well, yeah, the
All the
Pope is
stuff
part of the
they are
Illuminati and
hiding.
things. The Vatican is its own country as well, basically. It's its
Yeah,
own space.
he has diplomatic immunity, right?
Yeah, it's their own space, and they can do basically whatever they want.
Literally,
And
even if it's against the law, they're just like, it's fine.
and as far as being part of an overriding world conspiracy, I can see why you would want to include somebody like that, but I can also see that becoming kind of a problem because uh, yeah, actually they have their own. They have the Vatican is its own city state in in Italy, in Rome. Basically, it's its own space, and they say they've based everything off of various biblical things, but they have their own civil law, they have their own police force, they have their own military, they have their like everything is all self-contained.
And a jump back to the Ark of the Covenant episode, some people believe they may be hiding the Ark of the Covenant as well.
And again, that's more stories that we have and more and the more stories that are out there, the more you wonder whether they were stories spread on purpose or whether they were
Yeah.
any of it's based in fact. There is some fact in there somewhere.
What I want to know is why they're hiding the library. What are they trying to hide from people?
Now that's an interesting point because just either last year, the year before, maybe a little bit before that, um, within the last several years, they opened up the library to select like researchers and things. They let people in to take a look and kind of go through it, but you weren't allowed to go through every single inch of it, obviously. But they were like, yeah, we've got the archives here. We're letting people in. And I think there was a reason for it. I think they were like, yeah, we wanted to let people look for something or to find some disputed history or something like that. I don't remember what the details were. It was several years ago. A lot of things were happening at the time. And obviously, nothing world shaking has come out of that um, that we know of. But it felt like at the time a lot like the same thing they did in the last few years with the UFO disclosures. They had those congressional hearings and various other things recently where they basically said,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, we've seen things we can't explain."
They're
But
trying to
that was it.
distract us.
That was it. They were like, "Oh yeah, we'll let the people know that yeah, things are out there." But that was it. They redacted most of it. They didn't follow up on any of it. They basically explained it away as, "Oh yeah, just because we don't understand it, it's doubtful that it's aliens." And that was it.
Yeah.
They they didn't go into much, and people were just like, "Oh, well," and they talked about it for a few months, and then it was gone, and you don't hear about it anymore. There's nothing else going on with it. Now, obviously, the whole thing is 2024, 2024, 2024,
Yeah.
and then the election things, which has dominated everything.
And then
And
next year will be 2025, 2025. And the
yeah,
cycle
because of that other
continues.
thing, there's that project thing that I don't even want to
Yeah.
talk about because the whole thing's kind of dumb to me.
We'd
But
probably get in trouble too, so
well, that too, because again, it's another hot topic,
yeah.
and anytime anything is current and going on in the moment, you never really know what the algorithm is going to do with it.
Yeah.
I'm not shy about talking about stuff, but at the same time, I don't want to shut down my avenue
Yeah.
to people over something that's, oh, well, we don't want you talking about that today, maybe next week. But getting back to the deep state as far as the United States goes, there are a lot of things that kind of make you wonder because there are a lot of things that are kept from people. Um, we know about the whole WikiLeaks situation,
Edward Snowden.
Snowden. Um,
Project Acoustic Kitty.
Now, a couple of those also are kind of like I have personal thoughts that are kind of negative about Assange. Even if he meant to do good things, I think he was in it for the money. But I don't want to go too far into that and make people mad. Um, but we have things that go on behind our backs here in the United States. And so you have to get to thinking, well, how does that happen within a government structure? Because if you do it, uh, we all know the government operates on paperwork, mountains and mountains and mountains of paperwork.
Yeah.
So, how do you get this stuff done with the paperwork not getting out? You could do everything all
Burn it.
digital these days, in which case you could keep it all self-contained onto external hard drives and whatnot. It's actually easier now, probably, to conceal
Mhm.
some of that stuff, at
Put
least
it
from
on a
that
USB
aspect.
drive and then keep it with you at all times.
But the other thing is we've got so many more cameras and we've got so many more networks, and the
Yeah.
cameras are frequently connected to networks, and they're hackable or they're
And
just
all the
overrideable.
computers are connected to networks with all your files on them.
Mm. Instead of just one person in an office with a bank of monitors watching the cameras in a building, now the cameras are all connected to Wi-Fi. And there's an app. If like a supervisor's like, oh, well, I'm at home right now, but I need to check on my employees, make sure they're working. He punches up the app, it's secured, it's only for people who
Mhm.
work in the department. He can access any of the cameras he wants from home. And he can see, oh, Jim's taking his third bathroom break. Well, he's fired. Things like that, you know?
And you
So,
know who else can see all that? The hackers.
and that's another area too, which is interesting because you get a lot of hacks of things that are interesting. Like you get hospitals who get their medical records hacked and held for ransom and things, right?
Yeah.
Why do you never get more centralized government records hacked? Is it because the servers are so much better?
I don't know.
Maybe,
I heard
but
Anonymous did it a couple of times.
then you have to wonder where's the information.
Yeah.
Because you don't usually hear about, and you hear about hacks on infrastructure, like hacks on the energy grid and things of that nature, because that's utility work. That's not stuff that's directly controlled by the government. It's very rare that you hear about government controlled, like direct government controlled
Project
information
Stux.
being hacked and being released to the public. You always hear about stuff that's involved with
I think it's a spy
non-government
game.
things.
I think it's because it's a spy game. Have you heard of Stuxnet?
Talk about it.
It's the idea that, well, not idea, but it was one of the earliest computer viruses we had, and they put it on a USB flash drive, and as soon as you plug that flash drive in, it would infect that computer and every computer connected to the same network that that computer was connected to, and it was spread. And apparently it's still out there to this day infecting computers. And even as far as we've advanced, it still is infecting computers and just laying dormant. And they say that they're using it, and the governments for, America, China, Russia, all the different world governments are studying Stuxnet and computer viruses, and they're doing digital warfare and digital spying on each other, and that's why the files are being traded amongst each other's governments as blackmail.
The thing about computer viruses too is that you don't wipe out viruses. You just build a
Put a
system that
band-aid
can
on it.
safely ignore a virus.
Yeah.
And every virus that's ever been created in general is still floating around as lines of code somewhere on like out on the network. It's
Yeah,
just
like I've go ahead.
not all of it is good enough to self-replicate or to change its own protocols. A lot of it isn't. A lot of it's all brute force stuff.
Yeah.
And once you have a protocol against it, it just butts its head and it can't get in. But it's still there.
And if you get on, like I was going to say a second ago, if you get on an older computer without the modern security features, it'll get infected immediately as soon as you connect to the internet.
And that's true of a lot of those. It's they're all just floating around, and that's it's a mind-boggling to think about that the amount of code that floats around across what we consider the internet these days. There's
and
so much of it that's useful, but there's just billions and billions and billions of lines of junk.
And that goes
And
back to the Patriots from Metal Gear Solid. That was another part of their thing, was they wanted to fill the internet with so much useless information that you have to dig through and dig through and dig through and dig through all this useless information in order to find the information that you actually want, that's actually useful to you. And that's why they let everyone on the internet like that, so that everyone can lie and tell lies and you don't know what to believe anymore, because everyone can say whatever they want and it gets like bloated.
which is interesting considering the amount of censorship that's being called for these days. Now, as an example, I don't use whatever Twitter is now.
Yeah. I call
Uh,
it
I
X Twitter.
I didn't use it much before. The little bit that I did use it, it just caused me more problems than good because if you have an opinion,
Everyone's grumpy
somebody
on
else is
there.
going to argue with you about it.
Yes.
And unless you want to be involved in an argument, then there's really no point. I mean, a lot of people get their news because it's rapid fire. It's easier to just like, oh yeah, breaking news, this thing happened, stick it on Twitter real fast. But there's no context. There's no context to
You
it,
got
and
to click a link.
context is key. Context is super important. Even if there's a link, somebody might have like, "Oh yeah, I just saw this thing happen." It's a video of them talking about it,
Yeah.
but they might not know what they were seeing yet.
They're
They
actually
didn't,
adding community notes to add context now on
and it's
certain tweets.
it's interesting, but I don't know if it's going to work. The thing
Oh
that
no,
happened before,
it's already been broken a few times with
the
false
thing
information.
that was happening before, when apparently Twitter was great and everybody was happy with it, was that if there was a prevailing opinion, if something was posted that didn't go with the prevailing opinion, it was misinformation and it was actively deleted and removed, which is a serious problem.
Yeah.
Um, and now
Oh,
it's
that
all
sucks,
open.
James. I am so sorry.
And while I'm in favor of everything being open, at the same time, a lot of the things that people are saying are kind of pointless.
A
Like
lot of you people shouldn't have social media accounts, okay? I said it. That is my own personal opinion.
80% of what you get on something like Twitter or Facebook or wherever is nonsense, or even outright just like BS.
The
There,
the
there's
the AI stuff where Google AI tells you to go glue cheese to your pizza and jump off the Golden Gate Bridge if you're sad.
a lot of that's based off of stuff that people post naturally.
Yes, that's the funny part.
And you have an extreme on that end where people are pumping up so much just worthless everything. And then you have the other side, which is like, delete everything that doesn't make any
Don't
sense,
eat
delete
fried
everything that's
toothpicks.
bad, delete all this. And there's no good in between. And I don't think there ever will be. I think we're always going to be stuck within
Brain rot.
a range of let everybody post whatever they want, even if it's the stupidest thing you've ever seen in your life. Or, on the other hand, pick a handset bunch of people who say these are the facts and these are the only facts and delete everything else.
Do you
Because then you
remember
have to make sure
planking?
that you trust those people.
Do you remember planking?
Yeah, like all the trends and things like that
Yes.
and all that.
Now they're eating fried toothpicks on TikTok.
Well, they were eating Tide Pods, so
Yeah.
you know. And
They gotta tell you not to eat NyQuil chicken.
yeah, like
Like,
there's no good in between. And if you loop that back around, on the one hand, you would think with so much obvious information and opinions and everything flowing out there, it would be easy to prove whether some sort of shadowy organization was operating or not. But then again, who would believe it?
and what if they're letting all this nonsense out there just to make it more complicated?
We already know that there's the ability to make private networks within the overall internet sphere. A lot of
Like
corporations have their
Discord.
own corporate networks. Um, You've got stuff like that, which even that is a lot more public. Like there's stuff you can
Yeah.
do with privacy settings, but I'm talking about like fully secured where you don't know that it's even there. You're within a corporate structure and oh yeah, we have our
Just
own local
type in the
network
IP address.
and you only communicate with people on that network. The federal government 100% has that
Yeah.
and has had it for a long time, since before the internet was really a public thing, because that's how they would communicate in the field with various military units and things like that. So that's where you kind of have to wonder. You have to wonder if perhaps as part of the theoretical hypothetical Illuminati deep state, if the modern internet is all just, oh yeah, this is for everybody out there. It's all the junk. It's all whatever. Everybody will be satisfied with that because it's all the stuff they like. It's their recipes and their movies and their music and their whatever and their opinions on who cares. And we'll talk about everything that's important on our own hardened network.
Yeah. But what if they're actually letting people post everything they want so they can study it, and the more that people post, the more data they have to manipulate the general population because they get a better idea of how they think.
And to be honest, that's not hard because
Yeah.
you spend a day on the internet and you look at, oh yeah, everybody's obsessed with Taylor Swift. So what do? If you're a shadow organization, oh, you try to see how do I manipulate all the people who are interested in
How
Taylor
do you
Swift,
manipulate Taylor Swift?
or that, or even that, and that's where a lot of the idea of these supposed celebrities being part of the Illuminati, I think, comes from, and that perhaps somebody comes along, oh yeah, here we're part of a federal group, we're trying to change, housing for underprivileged people, or we're trying to do this. Here's a whole bunch of money for you to keep doing this dumb thing that you're doing.
Who's more powerful, a rock star or a political leader?
And it's all, it's all part of the optics. Optics are really the biggest thing. I talk about this all the time. Everything in politics and in society is based around optics. If something doesn't look good, people will believe it's not good, no matter what you intended to accomplish or what you intended to do. If it looks good to the people, they love it. Nothing you can tell them will change their mind. But if it looks bad, it doesn't. And that's where a lot of the things about the current election cycle, without going too much into details, is about
Yeah.
optics. You're being shown this person is deficient in this area. This person is a criminal in this area. This person is this. This person
Biggest
doesn't do
smear
this.
campaign in history.
It's all optics. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter whether any of these things are true or not. And there are a lot of truths in there. There are a lot of things that are true, but it doesn't matter if it's true or not. It's
It
about
only
whether
matters
what
which
it
one
looks
is
like
your party, right?
and what it looks like. If it
Yeah.
looks good to you, who cares? You're going to vote for it no matter what. If it looks bad to you, it's bad. You don't like it. You're going to protest it. You're going to get other people to protest it. You're going to do whatever you can do not to get that other thing.
Yeah.
It's all optics. And occasionally you'll get people on one side or the other who say things about their opponent, but they'll say it in a way that looks bad. So then the optics are bad. Even if they intended to make the other person look bad, the way it looks is it looks like it's bad. And I don't want to make people think I'm taking any sides on something,
I get
but
what you're getting at.
it's a pretty important example that I'm going to give people. And again, I'm not taking sides. If somebody is legitimately a criminal and they're getting away with criminal things, yes, go ahead and prosecute them. But during a situation where two people are going towards a goal and it's either one person or the other person, and you consistently throw criminal stuff at one person over and over and over in an ever increasing stack, right? It looks bad.
Hmm.
It's optics. I'm not saying that person is innocent. I'm not saying that person is guilty. I'm not saying that person doesn't deserve to have all these things thrown at him at once if they did all those things, right?
Yeah.
And I know people know exactly what I'm talking about, but again, trying not to
And
get kicked off of YouTube.
also for the other side, I'll just say one word: laptop.
It's optics.
Yeah.
You have to check the things, you have to look at things. If it's something that you think somebody has done wrong, you might just have to wait until certain situations are finished before you do certain legal actions, right? I mean, I know there's statutes of limitations and you can't wait on some things, but other times you have to be like, okay, we're just going to wait and see what the people do because the people have a right to pick what they want to pick. But when that's all said and done and it's finished and there's no competition going on, do your thing because while it's going on, it looks bad. And that's the problem. People don't
Yeah.
care about the facts at this point. They just
Because it
care
just
that it
looks
looks
like a
bad.
smear campaign for either side.
Right. And I'm not taking any sides because I
Yeah.
think both the current sides are pretty awful, to be honest. I'm not into anybody that's running for any particular office at the
I'm for
moment.
third party Afro Man. Am I allowed to
Um,
say that much? I'll just leave it at that.
he did, get treated pretty poorly by those police breaking down his door. I hope they paid
Yeah,
for it.
like he deserves to be president after what happened
I
to
hope
him.
they paid for his front door because
And I hope they didn't steal his lemon pound cake.
that's right. He had a whole song about it.
I know, I loved it.
But again, it's all about the optics.
And I hope
And
they
that's
paid for
where
his
we
door,
are
like you said.
as far as all this goes with either a deep state or an Illuminati, whether they exist or not. It all depends on what people are seeing. And if they don't see what you're putting out, then they don't care.
Afro Man
And
2024.
organizations will always find a way to operate in secrecy because people aren't looking, because they're looking at other things.
Yep, that's what the
Optics,
distractions are.
optics, optics, optics. That's the word. That's the key word
Yes.
to everything. Steven, do you have closing thoughts?
Yes, I would like to bring it back to Metal Gear again.
Lay it on us.
So in Metal Gear Solid 4, Guns of the Patriots, they had gotten to a point where the Patriots are basically the game's equivalent of the Illuminati, the secret, shadowy organization that runs everything behind the scenes. And it had gotten to a point where they had installed nano machines, the tiny little robots, into people, into their bloodstream through, can we say the I word?
Intravenous?
INJ.
Oh, injections. Yeah. Yeah, that
Yes.
should be fine. Yeah.
Okay. And they used injections to inject the nanomachines into people's bloodstreams. And over time, they were able to get it to a point where these nanobots were able to actually start controlling people and through their bloodstream. And they use that to control everybody and turn it into a state of constant war. And then the private military companies rose up because the government started to crumple and they couldn't do it anymore because there were too many mercenary groups and they were all fighting for power. And then through the nanomachines, they were able to suppress their physical pain inhibitors through the nanobots and the nanomachines. And it was just a state of constant war. And eventually they got to a point where they were able to ID lock guns through the use of nanomachines. So people literally couldn't even fight back.
Another interesting series of games, if anybody's interested in that particular tack of taking the topic, is the Deus Ex series of games.
Oh, yes. Those were amazing.
The modern ones are both pretty good. I like them both. They're both actually prequels to the first game that came out in the late 90s, I think.
Oh, that's interesting because I never actually played the original one.
The original one dealt heavily with Illuminati, Majestic 12,
Yeah.
AI, and a bunch of other things. It dealt with a virus that was
Nice.
manufactured to get people to rely on certain
Oh,
things.
you just broke the code word. V.
Yeah, well, one shouldn't be too bad as long as I don't add
Okay.
to it. As long as I don't add the other
Okay.
conditions to it. But it and we already were talking about computer viruses, so
Okay.
I think we're all right as long as it pays attention to context. If not, we're already gone and we're not even on the air anymore.
Oh no.
But
It says we're live.
but the first Deus Ex was one of my favorite games. because the concepts and everything was great. The idea of cybernetics, the way they presented the shadow societies, um, and there's a lot of other things that you can get into if you're interested in exploring this in a fictional way. Um, what are your guys' thoughts on the idea of Illuminati or Deep State? I know there's a lot of strong opinions about it. I know we tried to avoid a lot of personal things about that because, again,
Mhm.
we're trying to present information and trying to not get shut down here.
Yeah.
But if anybody wants to have a discussion about it, you can comment on this video once it's finished on YouTube or on Facebook. And we will try to shield you from the Facebook and YouTube censors as best we can. If they tell us, oh, so and so might be spreading disinformation, we'll try to be like, who cares? Leave it alone if the automated bot comes around. We have a Facebook group where sometimes that happens. I've tried to look at the settings and tried to prevent the automated like disinformation checker from getting rid of anything, but it still catches a couple things here and there that it says are disinformation, and whether they are or not is not really our call. I don't think. I'd rather we have it posted there and see how it goes. But for the most part, we try to be proactive and let you say what you want to say. Just be polite.
Yep.
If you argue with anybody in the comments, be nice about it. Don't call any names.
Keep it
Don't be
civil.
rude. Yeah, we don't want to have to ban or delete anybody for just being
Debates
rude.
are okay as long as you're still civil with each other.
Right. Rob will be back next week. I think he wanted to talk about the hot button thing that happened a few days ago on
Yeah.
some level, because we also wanted to compare it to other times that has happened in history. If anybody doesn't know what I'm talking about, then I'm going to bring up JFK as the
Yeah.
example. That would possibly be the topic next week, and how that possibly connects to things like the deep state and the Illuminati, etc. But who knows? We'll keep you in the loop.
And we will be sure to keep it civil.
Right. One other thing too. If I recall correctly, someone in this room has a new video show, and I think they should talk
Yes.
about it. So let's do
All
that
right.
now.
So I got a promotion, and they have allowed me to do my own segment now. I have decided to call it The Intern's Oddities from Around the World. And I think for my first idea, I'm going to go with Kuchisake Onna, or the Slit-Faced Woman, which is an urban legend from Eastern culture. And these videos are probably going to be about 15 to 20 minutes on average. And for this first video, like I said, we're going to do like a Japanese urban legend. And I think in the future, from here on out, I think it would be nice if I did like one culture each month and then try to switch it up a little bit. I think that might be a good idea.
Sounds good. Good, easily digestible time slots and everything.
Yep.
And it's part of our move forward into trying to give you guys more content, more things to get into. Um, and hopefully we can kind of kickstart this thing. If you are not yet subscribed to the video channel on YouTube, please do so. It takes 500 subscribers minimum for us to start getting monetized. And that may seem like a large number, but it's not that big. 500 people is
Oh,
really not that bad.
and while you're talking about subscribers, we have this Uncanny Media Network, and we actually do need that as well in order to we need one more person to join this Uncanny Media Network so that we can start live streaming, right?
Oh,
Is that
actually, we must have gotten that because I'm live
Oh, did we
streaming
get it?
there with the YouTube as well. It
Okay,
let me go.
good.
It let me push it through this time. So, but
Nice.
still, follow us on the Facebook page, the Uncanny Media Network, and of course, this is the YouTube. So make sure you're subscribed to this. And we are also taking a serious hard look at the Patreon. If you want to do any sort of supporting, we want to make sure we give you guys something tangible, something that's
Yes.
worth subscribing for, rather than just tuning into the shows.
Oh,
The shows will always be free. Um, But
And
we
we
are
used
working
to
on.
be on Spotify back in the day. We are working on trying to get that back up at some point.
Yes, we are hopefully going to kickstart that as well for people who like to listen rather than watch, or if you can't have your YouTube open and you can have your audio open on your phone. So lots of big stuff going on, new shows, new stuff, and I think that's it for us. So make sure you guys tune in next week. Rob will be back, and we'll have more to talk about.
Stay uncanny.